Right, okay, we're on now, so it's all fine. I can always play around and edit stuff. I'm not very good at it, but I have a go. Right, okay. Here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Northern Art Podcast with me, Aunt Cosgrove. Hope you're all doing very well indeed. I've been to various exhibitions since the last episode. Highlights locally definitely include the Hepworth exhibition that I went to, the Hervin Anderson one, and as well as Hervin Anderson's work, the other artworks that he had on display as well, which was just amazing in that exhibition. The Michelangelo's, Francis Bacon's, and everything else. It was just brilliant. I really enjoyed that. A couple of nights ago I was at the Rob Poynton exhibition at Contemporary 6 in Manchester. Rob's one of the finest plein air painters in the country and he's a really nice guy as well. In fact, the next podcast after this one will be one with Rob Poynton, so look out for that too. I recently visited Venice as well, which was incredible. Busy, but incredible. Really enjoyed that. Also visited Croatia recently as well. Went to Split and to Dubrovnik. In Split, went to various art galleries. Saw the work of Ivan Meštrović, the most sort of famous Croatian 20th century sculptor, and that was really powerful. I really enjoyed that. And then over to Dubrovnik, and just walking the streets around Dubrovnik, which is a beautiful city if you ever get to visit. Amazing place. Came across a artist who just had a studio there called Selma Hafizovic. She'd gone to Goldsmiths in London, and I thought her work was really interesting. So that was just walking randomly through Dubrovnik and came across that. So that was cool. But that's enough about me. It's time to introduce you to my guest today on the Northern Art Podcast. This is an episode I've wanted to do for ages, so really cool to finally get it done. My guest today was born in Stockport in 1966. She is a film director and writer and producer with a list of credits which include her semi-documentary Dreams of a Life from 2011, her 2014 film The Falling, which had a cast including Maxine Peake, Maisie Williams, Monica Dolan and Florence Pugh, also Out of Blue based on the Martin Amis book Night Train. Her latest movie, Typist Artist Pirate King, is based on the artist Audrey Amiss, played by Monica Dolan, and her psychiatric nurse Sandra, played by Kelly Macdonald. I have connections to my guest due to a painting by Audrey, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you on the Northern Art Podcast, Carol Morley. Hi, Carol. How are you doing?
Hello, Anne. We finally get to speak.
I know. We've never seen each other, have we?
No, never spoke, but I now follow you and you're...
that's it, you do. I follow you intently. Yeah. It's very good. Yeah. It's very good. First of all, I'll show you something on screen, actually, which I've got here next to me. Not great for a podcast, but I'll describe it because it's doing sort of the rounds on social media quite a lot at the moment. And it's your famous badge. So these badges, this is the Typist Artist Pirate King badge. You've been busy with those, haven't you?
Yeah, so the sort of thought behind it was... I think post-COVID and cinema in difficulty, cinemas, I just felt like actually doing something like a badge, which felt quite punk as well, sort of like homemade kind of publicity for the film. But it was also like every screening where I'm going to do a Q&A, we're going to give people badges. So it's a sense we're all part of a family. And then I got into tote bags though. And
right, is that new?
That's new. I mean, they're very limited edition. But recently, I got to, believe it or not, the badge is now in the possession of Martin Scorsese, who also has a tote bag.
I heard, my brother messaged, literally, my brother who's like follows you as well. Honestly, it was the morning. I was out and about somewhere, and he messaged, "Have you seen who Carol's with? And I was like, "What do you mean?" So I was like checking out. I was on my Instagram, and there you are with like Martin Scorsese. So yeah, that's incredible. What was he like? Was he all right?
Well, he's lovely, but I actually. Some years ago, I got a message going Martin Scorsese from his people wanted to talk to me. And we had a 45-minute conversation. Whoa. And he screened The Falling and Dreams of a Life in his screening room for his friend Brian De Palma. Just as an... and I think maybe... To say it mildly, I could have died then. It was like, okay,
that's enough now, yeah.
That's enough now. But then we have been trying to meet over the last few years. Like if I was, a couple of times I went to New York for something, but it never worked. And then he was screening his latest film, which is brilliant, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah.
Flowers. So bad at titles. Anyway, it's fantastic. And there was an after party in an inner sanctum, really, of that after party.
Right.
And I met him finally. And I was very, very cheeky and got the merch out, the homemade merch, the badges, the special edition tote bags. And I did about 4 T-shirts, of which...
He's got the square badge. You've done a square badge, haven't you?
Well, actually, the square badges are going to be given out at screenings. So the square badges are for the people. So he has a square badge for the people.
Excellent.
And because, I did 1,000 round ones that was the limited edition of that. So I didn't do any more round ones. So the square ones are for everyone.
That's cool. We have a couple of a few mutual friends now. One, thanks to you, really, is David Renfrey, who's a Royal Academician. And I think I've seen him with the badge, I'm sure, at some point.
He's got a badge.
I think everybody's got one. And so I met him and I met Caroline at Lincoln earlier this year. That was really cool because he had an exhibition on there, and I met him and I met Martin Gayford, who was doing a Q&A with him as well. That was really good. And David, of course, was in charge of the Royal Academy summer show this year as well. So that was all over Instagram this summer. I'm hoping actually to do a podcast with David because he's got a show on, I think, in Beverley in 2025. So hopefully that'll happen at some point nearer to that. So watch this space with that one. And then another mutual friend,
great man and a great artist, isn't he? And he has whole connections, right?
He's brilliant. He's really. I love the sort of these massive watercolors that he does. These huge works. They're fantastic. They're really interesting. And he's got a really interesting story with his his time in New York and all his sort of connections. He's a really. I mean, he talks about an artist called Michael Andrews, who I love the work of Michael Andrews. So he mentions him and his connection with him. And he's a really fascinating guy. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. That'll be really good. Brilliant. And then another mutual friend is Kim from your days back in Manchester. And I used to work at the Hacienda days. Yeah, I used to work with Kim, and she'd tell me about the days in the Hacienda in the 80s in Manchester. And you made a film about that, which is Carol Morley, The Alcohol Years, which obviously was made after when you left Manchester and gone to London. And I watched that because Kim actually said, watch it and see if you can spot me in it. Because she does actually look a little bit different, perhaps. But I did watch it. And I'm a bit too innocent for that film, to be honest with you.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, Kim was a very good friend then. I think I still keep in touch with her a little bit, but Kim was really kind of, I think everybody adored Kim. She was she's lovely, isn't she? Yeah, everyone adored her, and she was cool. She was very, very cool.
Yeah. But you can still get that film online on the BFI player, I think, on the website there. And so at the moment, you're doing this huge tour for your new film, Pirate Artist. Sorry, God, I can't even speak. I keep wanting to say thief at the end of it for some random reason. Anyway, whatever. That's fine. That's fine. Anyway, you're doing all over the country with these Q&A sessions. Yeah. That is brilliant. Do you normally do as much as that for a new film?
No. I think it's really wanting to connect with audiences. It's wanting, after COVID, cinemas are struggling. I think it will help support cinemas, and by being there, more people might come if the people that made the film are there. I think it's just connecting to people and really getting a first-hand account of what they think of your film, which I'm loving, and the Q&As. And in fact, I showed it. We did a preview screening in Dundee as part of the Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival, and there was just this brilliant. We showed it at the Dundee Contemporary Arts. And there was an audience member during the Q&A who said, I'm a mental health nurse, and Kelly Macdonald in your film's depiction of Sandra, the mental health nurse, is the best representation I've ever seen of a nurse. Wow. And that was, and she went, it's made me, because they have to, a mental health nurse has to be so sort of closed and about what they're feeling or thinking. So they just really saw Kelly Macdonald's representation as being brilliant. And then afterwards, somebody said, my mum wants to meet you. And her mum came up to me and she went, I'm 76, never cried in a film before, and I've cried for the first time. Wow. I spent the last 50 years in and out of mental hospitals. So it kind of is reaching the artists and the people, that have experienced the world of psychiatry, and lots of people beyond that. But it's really exciting, because I would never have known that if I hadn't been there. And of course, you can't attend every screening, but I think in the end we would have done about 35 Q&As But
That's
so there's lots and lots more to come, even after release. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, I know that you did mention to me like all that time ago when we first sort of was in touch. You'll definitely do some Manchester ones. And you are actually doing 2 up here. You're doing one in Manchester and then you're doing one in Stockport as well. I'm going to both of them, by the way.
Yay! You'll get double the badges.
Yeah, that's it. One bit. Yeah, that's it. In fact, in Stockport, I'm on the front row.
Yay! I know where to look there.
It's a really good cinema, because it's really sort of intimate. It's really intimate. It really is. And even if you're on the front row, you're on the level with everybody. Literally, it's
the Light, isn't it? Because I haven't been to the Light in Stockport, but I looked at pictures. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It's really sort of luxury sort of cinema. It's really nice. So so I'm going to both of them. So that'll be good. And they're in. Yeah, I think it's the 1st of November is the Manchester one, and I think it's like 28th or 29th or something like that of November, the Stockport one.
So from home in Manchester to the Light in Stockport, to Light. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, very good. So today, Carol, we're going to talk about your brand new film, okay? Which I won't say the name of because I'll get it wrong again.
Typist Artist Pirate King.
That's the one, yeah. But first, as is customary, I tried to learn about my guest development to become interested in the creative world as a career. You were born in Stockport. Did you have any early interest in like visual arts or in writing or anything like that when you were a kid?
You know what? Like I wasn't.
Did you like to read?
I loved reading, but you know what I thought of is that when I was at primary school, there was a teacher, Miss Kirkham. I remember her name. Now I'd never been anything like particularly good at anything kind of kid, but Miss Kirkham sort of took an interest in me, and she thought I was really good at art. And I remember when I was about 9, so I was in 2nd year junior school. She gave me a letter to give to my mum and dad. And it said, it sounds a bit cruel of my mum and dad, but I think they were just baffled. But it said something like, I really think you should consider Carol going to, is it the Manchester Art School that you can go to at 11? Yeah.
Wow.
And she wrote that to my mum and dad, and they laughed. And they laughed because they just thought it was highly ridiculous. So it was never mentioned again. But she must have seen some talent. And so whenever there was like craft things or art things, I would get a double dose of it. She'd let me go off and do it again. But then that was that. And then I was interested in art at school, like senior school, but I didn't really, I don't know, it was weird times. It was really like the only way forward you saw was being in a band. It wasn't at 14 I wanted to be in a band. And I remember at careers at school, because it was Thatcher, the height of Thatcher's Britain, very high unemployment in the north, factories shutting everywhere. And in careers it was like, if you work hard you might get a job. Wow. It won't be the job you want, but you might get a job. So it was kind of, I didn't even think of going to like college or university particularly, although having said that, at 16 I did go for like 2 or 3 weeks to I'm remembering it all now. I did go for about 5 weeks to Rochdale College of Art from Stockport. Right. And I'd get the bus. I'd have to get on it at about 6:30 to get there in time. And I'd usually gone to the Hacienda the night before or somewhere. So I'd fall asleep on the bus. And then I don't think I could keep like the nightlife and that life going. So spent many years on the dole, doing bits and pieces, and then at one point moved to London, fled Manchester really because I got such a bad reputation, which is now immortalised in the film The Alcohol Years, which you mentioned before.
Which is brilliant, yeah. So it's interesting that you sort of your Manchester time and you were involved in music, weren't you? You did like you were in bands and stuff, weren't you? Sort of
Top was one of the ones.
Yeah. Were you interested, like with regards to like obviously becoming a filmmaker? Was there any sort of, were you interested in the music video? I mean, like people like Derek Jarman and people like that, isn't it? Did you even know of these people? I guess probably not. Maybe.
I mean, in Manchester you had Icon, which were, they made the factory videos, didn't they? And the videos for the bands, and they all seem to be blokes. And I don't know, like I didn't really, I mean, I think there was a woman involved, but I didn't know about her. But at that time, I've only learned about her recently with the Audrey Gillen book and on Manchester. But I feel like the idea of being in charge of a camera or making films didn't seem even And if you think about it, I don't know. I mean, obviously by then there had been women film directors, but I didn't know anyone. You know, there weren't many, but also it just wasn't in the possibility range. And as you know, so my brother, 9 years older, ended up writing for New Musical Express, and in our family that was like he, you know, hit the jackpot of the lottery, you know. And it's not like he earned that much money, but it was sort of like, oh my god. And I remember showing my niece his article. I mean, my cousin, his article in the NME, and she was about 7, and she went, doesn't he write neatly? You know, it never occurred. So it was all a massive deal when Paul got writing for the NME. It was like the first person in our family to do anything else.
Did that push you on then? Did that push you on to do something?
Well, I think it made me think I could be in a band. I mean, I didn't think I could write because I thought he can write, I can't write. Even though at that point, I think secretly I wanted to be a writer. Even before that, I think that was my first thing. I wanted to be a writer because it seemed a cheap and accessible way. I suppose it's not like I formulated like that, you know, it like that then. But I think now, while looking back, it seemed accessible because you could have a pen, you could have paper, and you could do it. There was nothing else involved. And then, but then the music thing, you did know people in bands and stuff. And we would, like, when I was in a band, like I was in a band about 14, and it was with lads that owned guitars and a lad that could buy a synthesizer, a Korg synthesizer. So it was like money was important, and you know, but I think I eventually managed to buy a microphone, but that took some time, and it was like this second-hand mic. So you had your own equipment and would go places. But later, when I was in a band with Debbie, when I was about 19 tot, we used to sneak into at the boardwalk. I think it was, they had rehearsal rooms, and Colin used to let us sneak into James's rehearsal room. So they never knew we would use their room. And so it was all ways of like working it out without money. But music, because everybody in Manchester, in the alcohol years, Dave Aslam says something like, you'd see someone, you know, buying cheese in the shop on the Dolan, the next week they'd be on top of the pops. And so there was that seemed doable, viable, whatever, you know. And my mum and dad had left school at 14, so there was never that. Although I had an auntie who was like kind of, you know, had mental health problems and had studied art in Stoke. She'd studied art. Right. And so she lived sort of with my grandma, or sometimes in the flat above my grandma, and you'd go and there'd be a painting that was really disturbing, and it'd be a self-portrait, and half of it would be brown and half green with always a spider plant in the background. So that was a kind of way into art, but it seemed quite disturbing and not something I do. And actually she did paint a portrait of me, but my mum threw it away. So I can't remember that. Anyway. It's
fascinating. I mean, it's amazing. Obviously, you and Paul have obviously had, you know, have gone into, you know, become really successful. So yeah, fair play to you. It's really nice out of the same family, isn't it? You know, you've done well. You've done well for yourselves. Well done. And then you moved to London. And then how did you decide to do the film course? How did that come about?
So I moved to London, and I was in just signing on the dole, trying to get other bands together. And it really was like I'd fled Manchester because I felt like I built up this bad reputation. So it was I'm not going to go back there. My mum sort of moved as well. And so there was nothing in Manchester and no family there at that point. And then, so I was sort of pretty much living in squats or short life housing in London and signing on or doing like working in shops, or I worked for like an agency where you could work without qualifications because I'd left school without any, and then or any substantial ones. I think I got like three O levels or whatever, and then I worked as a tea girl, a cleaner, a cloakroom, all through this agency. And then one day, I'd just been here quite a long time. I was about 23. And I thought, I've got to do something with my life. And in Loot, I think it was, there was an advert for a part-time video course that came along with doing A-levels, which obviously you'd normally do at 18. I was 23, A-levels at night in photography and film. And I thought I'd love to do that, but you did have to have a little portfolio. And then in Loot, that was massive at the time, where people would buy and sell secondhand stuff. There was a dark room for sale, and really cheap. And I bought this dartroom that came with absolutely everything and a camera because I'd seen this ad for this photo video course. And it was from a widow of a photography guy. And I turned the kitchen in this short life flat we were in into a dartroom. No one could use it as a kitchen. And then I learned from a book from the library to print photos. I took them, and then I bought a dart bag so you could, wind the film. So I learned it all from a book in a week. It was amazing. It was like the book, the equipment. And then I went for this interview, and I remember talking about film as well. And I hadn't really seen that many films, but I talked about a John Carpenter film I'd just seen at the Holloway Odeon, and I can't even remember which one it was now. And then I got on this course, and it was part-time, so I carried on working in the shop I was working in. But at night I would do A-level photography and film, and the film class was taught by this brilliant person, Bev Zorcock, who is an experimental filmmaker and has also written books subsequently to that. Right. She was just inspiring, and I walked in and she had a denim jacket on with Sid Vicious on it, and I'm like, what a teacher, and she's absolutely brilliant. And so she really, really inspired me into film. And then it was that and the video course and whatever. And then I applied to St. Martin's to study fine art film. I also applied other places, but I really wanted to go to art school. I did have a thing about art school. So studying fine art film, I got on the course, met great people, and the teachers were great. John Smith was one of the tutors who I love to this day. He's a brilliant filmmaker. His sort of most famous film, I suppose, is Girl Chewing Gum, which you can find, which is brilliant. A brilliant artist, a brilliant filmmaker. And so then I got launched into that world, really. And so it was never about making feature films or making documentaries. It was more about using film as art, So one of the very first things we did was to get some acetate film frames clear, and you would draw on them and scratch on them and paint on them, and I would lecture set enough of them so when you projected it the words would appear, and so it was a very material hands-on way of learning about film.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've seen some of your early films, and obviously that you did a couple for when you were at St. Martin's, and then I've seen that you did sort of a lot of short films, didn't you, earlier in your career? After that, I've seen this. Is it called The Girl? I think it is. That's really powerful. That one. I thought that was ace. That one. The girl in it's actually brilliant as well.
She's brilliant. Girl. Yeah, it was. And again, it was like all kind of quite homemade in the sense of the girl in it was somebody's step sister, and then I came up to, but then the voice in the film, I obviously wanted a northern voice. You couldn't do it now, but me and a lad from St. Martin's, we took like the Nagra, the sound recorder, came to Manchester, just went to a random school, went in and said to the school secretary, do you think there's any girls that we could record like saying these lines? She didn't even look at the lines for the film. And then they put us in a 3 girls that like drama came forward. They were about 13, 14. And then we were put in a booth with them. And I got all 3 of them to do it, and then chose one of them later. And she was brilliant. But it was also like, just let's turn up at a school.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And then eventually you, obviously after the short films, you moved into feature films, didn't you? It was a skip ahead, and you of course moved into sort of making longer films. Would you ever consider doing a TV series? Is there anything, was that ever sort of, is it always going to be films? Is it always going to be that sort of thing that you're going to want to do?
I think the thing about what I'm doing is there's utter control. I mean, obviously you collaborate with your financiers and you're listening to them and all of that, but I do have with my company, Cannon and Morley Productions, we do have utter control over it all in many ways. And so if I went, I mean, I have been offered television things, but I've always turned them down because I feel that I'm just then losing sort of control over what I really want to do, which I think is to interrogate the image and to explore a story in a way that maybe wouldn't happen. I would never say never, because obviously if you get to write your own TV series, it would be different, like the Shane Meadows. But I've never.
I saw Sally Wainwright interviewed. She's a legend, didn't she? She's
totally.
Yeah, I mean, I love Happy Valley. I thought that was amazing.
Because that's her. That's like, you know, total with her collaborators, but total authorship over what she's doing. But it's very difficult to get to that point. If I could be at that point, I would do it. I mean, I have tried, but I never got it. So I think if you get hired as a director, it's a different proposition. So I do that, and I have had offers of that, good offers, but I just think no, I want to make my things, really.
Yeah, well, I think in that way that's quite an artistic way of looking at something. When you're doing it like that, you're not just making it for the market and for the world and to get bums on seats or whatever necessarily. You're making it because there's something in you that's making you want to make this. So that's a really sort of interesting.
The only way I can do it is like it's that stand by something you need to make and suffer somewhat a lot of time because you can't get money or you can't get it made, but just stand by it because in the end you will do it. It will happen.
Well, your feature films, you did Edge, you've done Dreams of a Life, The Falling, and Out of Blue. You've worked with some amazing actors as well along the way, including, of course, Maxine Peake, who's amazing, and Monica Dolan, amazing as well, Maisie Williams, and loads of others. But didn't you give like Florence Pugh her acting film debut or something like that? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I discovered Florence Pugh. I discovered her. So when we shot, where The Falling, we found. In fact, I wrote the script of The Falling around a school because it's set in a school, and I'd found this school on a location site for films, and it was in Oxfordshire. And I actually went to see the location as I was writing the screenplay because I thought, oh, this is brilliant. And so when we did choose that as the location finally, and the casting agent Shaheen Baig said, when you're casting the girls for the film, try and cast locally to Oxfordshire because then you don't have to pay for hotels. I mean, it was that, and then lots of leafleting to local schools, and I was getting hundreds of 1 minute tapes. You know, so I was asking for 1 minute. And Florence was one of them. And actually, she was it sounds like I'm making it up, but she was the very last tape to come through.
Wow.
The digital video, the 1 minute. And when I auditioned her, the casting people, she left the room, and I hadn't got her to do any lines. I'd got her to tell stories around these objects I've taken in, like shells and old photos, and just to see, because I think if an actor is a great storyteller, you know, you can feel they could work in a film to communicate with people, the audience, and each other. And she was 17 and she left the room. I thought she was utterly amazing. The other casting people went very quiet, and I went, do you not think she was amazing? And they were like, we've got goosebumps. That was like discovering a young Kate Winslet. So she had it. She always had it. She belonged to film even before she knew it. Amazing.
No, she's massive now, isn't she? She's absolutely
huge. She's like global.
She's a huge star. She's done really well. So then on to your new film now, Typist Artist Pirate King. You wrote it, you directed it, and it's taken a lot of years of research and work to release it. The film is based on the late artist Audrey Amiss. It stars Monica Dolan as Audrey Amiss and Kelly Macdonald as Sandra. They're both amazing in it, by the way. I mean, that's the first thing to say. They're both absolutely amazing. I've seen it twice, the film, by the way. So I've seen it 4 times by the time. It is brilliant. It's really good. Do you have actors in mind when you're sort of writing certain things, or does the actor, whoever it ends up having the role, they have to fit your requirements in the other way of who you envisage the person to be when you're writing it?
So with this, it was definitely writing Audrey Amiss. Yeah,
of course, you can't.
It was really like, I didn't have anyone in mind. I'd worked with Monica before on The Falling. She plays the headmistress, Miss Alvaro. Okay. And the thing about Monica is she can become anyone. She is a chameleon. You know, she's absolutely a chameleon. So she was perfect casting. And then I didn't know Kelly Macdonald at all. Obviously I worked, but not personally, and I never worked with her. And for Sandra, I had in mind this sort of deep person that didn't have to do or say much to know that there was so many things going underneath, so many undercurrents. And so she read the script, and I asked her, and she came on. And that was amazing because I think she's perfect, but I didn't have anyone in mind. In actual fact, I'm writing something now. And I have people in mind for it, like Maxine Peake, Monica Dolan, Kelly Macdonald. and it's I've never done that before, but it feels, because they're not real people at all, I feel free to do that, and it's been quite exciting because I brought in what I know of them. But really, you are creating characters, and then you're casting those characters. So, for instance, with Florence Pugh and The Falling, it was about bringing that character I'd written alive, and she had to be young, charismatic, the school crush. And that was Florence. So Florence became my character, but at the audition she was close to that character. So I think you're always looking for people that either are just so chameleon like they become those people, like Monica Dolan, or people that have the qualities on screen that are undeniably connected to what you're doing.
That's interesting. So the name of the film, Typist Artist Pirate King, where does it come from, the title? It's a bit of a mouthful.
Well, it's like Tinker Tola.
Oh yeah, I see.
But it was given to me by Audrey Amiss, the late Audrey Amiss. Yes. Obviously, she was not alive when she gave it me, but when I was looking through her vast archive, which is at Wellcome, the biggest charitable foundation in the world, and one of the biggest in health and science, when I was looking through her vast archive, in one of it was uncatalogued at the time, so I never knew exactly what I was going to find. And inside one of the boxes, there was everything that the archivist had swept from Audrey's table at home. And within that, there were biscuit crumbs and letters and her father's medals and from various things. And there was Audrey's old passport, where in the back in the day you'd have to put your occupation, and she had written Typist Artist Pirate King. Perfect. And as soon as I saw it, that's the title, because not only is it, I think, a great title, but it's also taps into this idea of identity, of who you are, what you are, which she played with her whole life, and also or whole adult life, it seemed. And she also saw people as other people, so she could meet you and think you were her old headmistress. So she had a very fluid idea of identity. So the title seemed perfect.
It's perfect. So how did you actually discover her then? Obviously, you went into the Wellcome Institute. Was that something that was sort of planned to do? Was it how did you actually come across
so I was really lucky, and I got awarded a Wellcome Screenwriting Fellowship, which gave me money for a year and time for a year just to research any of their collections or meet any of the people that are associated with Wellcome. It's vast. So there was loads of possibilities and directions I could have gone in, but I met someone there and they went, "Oh, I think we've got a collection of wrappers, food wrappers, by someone who collected the wrappers of everything they ate every day and annotated them." I'm like, I've got to see it. At that point, Audrey, it was all in deep storage. Some boxes arrived a couple of weeks later. I was given 2 hours in a room, spent all day there, and subsequently a year and more looking at everything. And I was just very compelled by her sketches, Audrey Amiss's art, and the way she annotated her daily life. You know, so it might be a receipt for a cornetto or a receipt for something at Wimpy. And she would tell this whole story of being thrown out of Wimpy and, you know, what had happened, and a lot of musings on art. And in her diary, it said, I used to be in the kitchen sink school of realism, but now I'm avant-garde and misunderstood. And so her art just moves from the, post-war British social realism you mentioned before to being conceptual avant-garde and modernist.
Yeah, it's quite abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, the actual collection, I mean, I've seen it described on like the Wellcome website. It's absolutely massive, isn't it? I mean, the collection, I think when, it's just vast, the amount of quite well kept in that.
50,000 sketches.
50,000 sketches. And then I guess paintings as well. And and all these diaries, which she called, was it workbooks? I think she called logbooks. I think it was, she referred to them as. I actually saw a really interesting description on the website. Somebody described, like with regards to like the volumes of these with these items inside it. Somebody said the amount of packaging and objects pasted inside a volume, it bulges and looks more like an accordion than a book, which I think is amazing. You've got the sort of picture, this sort of squirrels into this volume. And then she wrote letters to celebrities and to companies and politicians. And then she documented all these sort of things as well. It's
Yeah, she had a letter log, and that probably the accordion was probably written by Eleanor Carter. So
Okay.
She's the archivist that really, I mean, they were all absolutely brilliant, but she wasn't there when I began, and she came on later, and she fell in love with Audrey as I had, which I found really beautiful, because it was important to me that someone loved Audrey's archive like I did. They were all brilliant there. They all loved it, but Eleanor had a particular obsession like me. So Audrey kept letter logs. So the only letters I have of Audrey's are the ones that her sister kept of Audrey's. And when I met friends of Audrey's, they showed me letters. But the reason we know about all these letters is Audrey would keep the letter logs, how much she spent on postage and what the letter log was about. So it would be like, wrote a letter to the Salvation Army about my ongoing issues with thrush, wrote to the Sherlock Holmes Society about my missing sock.
That's unbelievable.
Brilliant. Wrote a follow-up letter to the Sherlock Holmes Society saying, I have recovered my sock. Wrote a letter to the Salvation Army Missing People's Unit asking to reunite with my mum and dad. I know they are dead, but surely this could be possible. And then you would see letters back from like the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Prime Minister's office or the Queen's office. And she would write a lot to Mother Teresa as well. So she had all this like kind of sense she wanted to be heard and wanted to write to important people so they knew she existed.
Yeah, I mean, she worked, didn't she, as well? She was a typist then, wasn't she, I think? Did she work for...
Yeah, she worked her whole work. Like, so she went to the Royal Academy school, studied painting, 1958 had her first breakdown, ended up as this revolving door psychiatric patient. But after her breakdown, she didn't return to the Royal Academy, and she became, she trained as a shorthand typist and then did the exams for the civil service. So it was a job for life. And she was in like what would be the National Insurance Office. But when that changed, she became a typist at the Brixton Unemployment Benefit Office, when it had kind of switched to computers and word processing, but they gave her a typewriter in the back office.
Right. Okay.
And she would read a lot, apparently.
Well, I mean, obviously after all this, you wrote an article then, didn't you, which was in The Guardian, which I think was that in 2016, I think it was,
yeah.
The article was. Yeah. So it was like a bit of time after. And then jump forward to September last year, go back to Audrey in a minute, but that's where sort of our story sort of began. And it was thanks to the article, but that was it really, because of the fact it was there, that it existed. That's why I obviously reached out to you. And that was me. But what happened with me is, one of the nerdy things that I do, I sometimes look at art auctions and stuff, and sometimes I'll see if I can attribute paintings to particular artists just for a bit of fun. Usually ones that are not obviously signed or anything like that, and sort of see if I can work things out. And so I was on this particular painting that sort of stood out to me, and I thought, well, that looks, obviously it tends to be something that's got a bit of something about it that'll sort of stand out and have a bit of quality. So I saw it and I thought, that looks like quite well painted. And it wasn't signed or anything, but then on the back there was a bit of sort of labeling and maybe a fragment of something, and then there was a clear exhibition label from the Royal Academy from, I think, 1958, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah, 1958.
58. So then that led me to sort of like troll through my archive of books and whatnot, and found the Royal Academy exhibition from that year. And then I was looking through to see if I could attribute the artist. There has a title on the label, which was Girl Reading, I think it was. It was quite a generic title.
Portrait of a Girl.
Portrait of a Girl. That was it. Portrait of a Girl, you know better than me. And there was, but there was about 3 or 4 paintings in the exhibition with the same title, which made it a bit harder. But then, just because I went back to the back of the frame, I could just make out one word of an address. And in the old Royal Academy books, they used to give people's addresses out in these things. They couldn't imagine it now, but they did back then. And so obviously I managed to find this one word and tied it up to an address. And then it came with this artist, Audrey Amiss. And I thought, oh, well, okay, I've never heard of her, so I'll Google her. So literally I Googled her, found your article from The Guardian, which was written like years previous. And then I didn't really know who you were. I didn't do too much digging, to be honest with you. But I just literally went on Instagram, found your Instagram page like straight away, and just sent you like a message and just said, hi, I've just wondered, I found this article you'd written about Audrey Amiss. I just wondered if she's still of interest, and I think I might have found a painting by her. And then you can take up the story then.
Well, then, I mean, I got goosebumps, and you sent me, I think, first of all, you said, I think you knew, but you said, I think I found one by her.
Yeah.
And then you sent me the image. I went, it's definitely her, because I just know her. I knew her style. So I knew even, I didn't need to look at the back or anything, but, and then, well, it was coming up at auction, wasn't it?
And I'm like, sorry, that was the whole thing. Sorry, it was I mean, really, it was lucky that you actually replied to my message, because obviously with Instagram, and it goes to some sort of, if you're not like in touch, friends or whatever, follow each other, it goes to that inbox, doesn't it? That sort of filtered inbox. So you actually luckily read it, because I get so much spam in that inbox. I don't even look at it half the time. And so, it was just lucky that you sort of saw it in the first place, because if not, if you'd left it another week or 2 weeks, it would have been gone. So
you'd found it in the auction catalogue, hadn't you? And then done really amazing research on it. And then you told me you were a nerd and that you would look for art around the country or maybe worldwide. I don't know. And then I'm like, well, my feeling was you'd found it and you had done the research on it and you might have wanted it. And I felt that it was yours to bid on. But then I wrote and went, well, Ant, I've spent 7 years making a film, and I would love to own a piece of art with Audrey Amiss, because I don't. If I could bid on it, I wouldn't want to bid against you. And it was really cool because you went, look, I'm going to let you bid on it. And so I think it was down at around 200.
It was quite low, wasn't it? The estimate. I mean, there's no history, is it? I wouldn't have thought at the auction there won't be
And also you attributed it, but they hadn't, so in the actual auction catalogue, it was not attributed to her. That's so right. It was like, and even if it had been, the only thing you would have found would be my article and that she, her archive was at Welcome, but there was nothing else about her. Anyway, so I said to you, could I bid for it? And you went, I'm going to step away and I'm going to let you bid for it. And then you taught me how to bid, because it was online bidding. And you were, and then you went, you can go on. It probably won't come up till the afternoon because you could see the order. Yeah. But I went on really early, and then I started to panic. And then I thought, I'm going to buy the cheapest item in the auction. And I bought a silver spoon for like 20 quid in order to practice bidding.
I love that. I was at work at the time. I was doing the day job, and I was with a girl in the office called Caris, and we were chatting. And honestly, she loved the whole story, which she sort of completely, and we were so invested in this auction, and we were like watching it like live. And then, of course, like you say, you messaged me about the spoon, honestly, and I was laughing my head off when you told me about the bid on the spoon. I was honestly, and then, and we were watching it, and then obviously the auction sort of got to the auction of your of the painting, and then the bidding commenced, didn't it?
Yeah.
And we didn't know how it was going to go, and we thought, well, maybe it'll just have no bids, and maybe it'll just be you who wins it. Yeah. But unfortunately, it didn't.
I was against people.
It was against at least one other person. I don't know how many others, but what's straight? So it's mad to think that there's somebody out there. I guess we still don't know who it is. Maybe they knew about it. They must have known who it was by.
I did think that they did they did research, and they knew that I was making this film, and and obviously loved the picture. But I did win it. And I think I with auction costs, I think I paid 1,200.
Yeah.
With auction costs, because they put about 30% on it.
It adds up, doesn't it? It adds up. It's cheeky. It adds up. But yeah, I
did go and collect it. So although I've done it online, but you see the little auctioneer, don't you? It's kind of like really interesting. Yeah. But then I went to collect it, and where was it? Surrey, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't too far. It wasn't a million miles away from you then, I guess.
An hour's drive, an hour and a half or so. Anyway, so went to collect it, and then everyone were talking about Audrey Amiss and everything. But then it comes full circle, because you'd found me through the Observer article I'd written about Audrey, and then I wrote, that comes out on the Guardian website. Yeah. And then I wrote about you in the Guardian.
Did.
Finding the painting, yeah. So it came sort of full circle. You'd found me through the Guardian, then I found you in the Guardian.
It was brilliant. It was really, and that was in, I think that was December last year, and I was in. I remember when it came out online, and I was in Bury actually I was shopping like with my family and stuff, walking out, and my phone kept buzzing, and it was people who'd seen the article saying, and I'm a bit weird in the sense that I like when something I know. I like the anticipation of things, perhaps maybe necessarily more than sometimes than the actual thing itself. And so it's like Christmas and stuff. I open my presents dead late at night. Honestly, I'm mental for that. I'm not up at like opening. I like to say I savor things. Yeah, I've had letters off artists who I adore. Yeah, and I've had them about 2 weeks before I've opened them.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Because I love that anticipation of it. It's just something that's
brilliant.
in me. I don't know what it is. But, and so subsequently with this, I wanted it to be read at the right time. So everybody's messaging me saying, "Oh, it's amazing, it's amazing." I'm like, no, I'm just going to wait until I get home. I want to sit down and have a cup of tea and then I'll read it. So I did. And yeah, it was brilliant. So yeah, thank you.
It's so interesting that it just sort of came round, back round.
It was amazing. And then you've got the painting at home now, I guess.
Yeah. So look, I'm going to.
Oh, have you got it there?
You see
it? Yes. Wow.
So I've got it so usually I face that wall to work.
Yeah.
And so I haven't got it. So it's in the side of my eye line. I have it. So I just have to glance up to the left.
That's amazing. No, it's and I guess that's as you mentioned before, it probably isn't much else out there in the world that apart from maybe within the family and within the welcome, I guess.
I'm going to tell you something really strange now. So because the family owned the copyright to all Audrey's work, but they donated it to Welcome. So Welcome owned probably almost the entirety, most of Audrey's work. The family have kept pieces. There's one painting in the film Typist Artist Pirate King because it's all the film features full frame Audrey's work, even though it's a dramatic account of her life. And then there's the one of them's owned by the nephew. The family owned pieces. Every friend I met had a lithograph of Venice that Audrey had given them. So every time I'd go and visit someone they knew, they seemed to have a framed lithograph that she'd done. That was brilliant. But there isn't much. But when I was researching her early on, like before, when I got the Welcome, there was only one thing I found online, and I couldn't really understand where it was, but it was a painting of a girl. It was a painting of a young girl. And I did show Dorothy, the sister, and Dorothy went, "Oh, it's, I think it's Judith," who was a neighbor of ours. Anyway, so I think it was in like a Leeds council, this painting.
Right.
And then suddenly it disappeared from being online. So it must have been part of some collection somewhere. Anyway, 2 days ago, somebody on Instagram got in touch with me and said, "Do you know anything? I've just bought this painting," and it was that painting. It's that painting. Oh. And they said, "Do you know anything about it?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it's a Judith." And I'm like, "Do you want to sell it?" Yeah. So that's an ongoing thing. But that's the only one I knew that was in the world.
That's amazing.
Apart from what like, for instance, Charlotte, who was at the Royal Academy at the same time as Audrey, her father bought one of Audrey's paintings or lithographs. I think it's a painting. So there are a few scattered about.
Right.
Oh, by the way, you encouraged me at the auction where I bought the painting to find out more about it. So I did ask them, and they did say, "Oh, all we can tell you, it was by a very discerning collector." But then I think you pointed me to The Guardian in the underneath comments to the article. Yeah. Someone had written, "Our aunt owned it. Our aunt." Yeah. But ultimately I couldn't reply because I wasn't, and then it disappeared.
I know. It's hopefully, maybe somebody, they might come forward at some point.
Yeah.
Somebody just come forward. Anybody listening, any connections to any of the paintings?
Yeah. So it sort of gets you, I can see why you can go on this kind of detective.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it does. It's really, I do love it. I'm a big fan of all that sort of stuff. So.
And also in doing that, you're saving an artist's work,
Yeah, that's true. So when she lived in London, she was with her mum once. She lived with her mum, didn't she, for quite a number of years? Is that right?
Yeah. So what happened? So she was at Royal Academy. She lived in around Holland Park, and I looked up Holland Park in the 50s, and it was a real dive. It was a real crumbling dive. It wasn't what it is now, which is really posh. So it's a lot of students lived in Holland Park. So she lived there. Then she had a breakdown. She went into Warlingham Park Hospital, which is like just outside Croydon, and then she didn't want to go back north. And her mum was a widow then. Her mum lived in Sunderland, and her mum sold up, and she had a shop. Her mum, they turned part of the house into a shop, and that's how they survived, because her dad was on the shipyards and long-term unemployment in the 30s, and they moved into doing this shop. her mum still had it, Belle Amiss. She sold up, and they bought this flat in Clapham, where they ended up. Well, Audrey lived there 50 years and her mum for 30 years.
Right.
And when I look back at that flat and what they bought it at, which was like about 1,200, it would be about 60,000 today, you know. Wow. So you just, you know, London has gone ridiculous, you know. So what they bought was modest, you know, but it enabled Audrey to have somewhere to live for the rest of her life, you know. So that gave Audrey, definitely enabled her to have stability, which I think is what Belle wanted. It was in Audrey's name. When she bought it, she put it in Audrey's name.
So the film itself then is kind of I mean, forgive me if it's like a composite sort of, which relates to Audrey's life and her diaries that you discovered at the Wellcome Institute, and then it's kind of your own vision of an exhibition road trip basically that she takes with Sandra, and there are loads of direct quotes from Audrey in there and throughout in the diaries throughout. I mean, there's paintings are in there, so it's sort of deeply involved, you know, with Audrey. It is Audrey, you've created Audrey, but with this sort of composite story. Is that sort of how you would see it?
Yeah, so I feel like I knew, you know, obviously with all this material, I met the family, I met the friends, I met colleagues, I met people she was at college with, but I knew I didn't want to make a documentary. I didn't want other people talking about Audrey. And I didn't want to make a film about Audrey. I wanted to make a film of Audrey that was sort of her. She absolutely loved traveling. She went to China before Wham and the Queen, when it just opened up in the mid-80s. Wow. And so I wanted to, you know, I thought actually the travel bug that she had, this, you know, she loved sort of conquering places and exploring. So I thought, make it a road trip. And then I kind of sensed she never had what she craved in her lifetime, which was recognition for art. So the drive between Audrey, you know, played by Monica Dolan, and Sandra, played by Kelly, is the drive to get an exhibition in Sunderland, to get an exhibition. And it really was helpful that Audrey, in her life, in her diary, she spoke about this thing where she would mistake people for other people. I mean, she didn't think she was mistaking them. She thought they really were them. So she would see someone and think they were at school with me, even though she went to a girls' school and it was a guy and he was far too young. And I spoke to a psychologist and they said, oh, that's people misidentification syndrome, where people believe someone is someone else. So because of that, Audrey gave me a way of doing flashbacks, because often in a biopic, let's say, because it is, you know, a biography of Audrey, you would see flashbacks to childhood played by other people and their younger selves and younger contemporaries. Well, I didn't need to do that. So in Typist Artist Pirate King, you know, they'll pick up a hitchhiker, young lad, and he'll stand in for somebody that Audrey was at the Royal Academy with, and that therefore had a bit of a battle with, and therefore that part of her past is revealed that way. So all the people many of the people she meets along the way stand in for people from her past, but she gave me that route in. Audrey, it's very,
very clever. I think I saw it and I thought of like a fairy tale sort of scenario where you sort of meet in different, like in a fairy tale where you meet particular characters along a journey, if you like, to get to an end point. It sort of had that sort of vibe about it when I sort of watched it. So yeah, and I think the acting in it is amazing. So Audrey died age 79, I think, which is in 2013. That's not that long, is it, really, in the scheme of things, before you discovered her archive at Wellcome?
No, it was about 3 years later, about 3. I started the fellowship really at the beginning of 2016, so about 3 years. And where you know, there was a point where I just knew kind of early on I wanted to make a film. So I asked the archivist about the copyright, and then I said I really wanted to meet the family, because I don't think I would have gone ahead making the film if they weren't happy with the film, because you might give the collection thinking an academic researcher is going to come and look at it. You might not think someone's going to come and want to make a feature film. So I met her nephew, Audrey's nephew and niece, Kate and Stephen, and they were really lovely, and we really got on, and really weird things happened. Like on the way, Kate had been doing a crossword puzzle, and one of the clues was something amiss, and it was really strange. And then I think the week before he met me, Stephen had watched one of my films, Dreams of Life, completely coincidentally with his son. So it's that kind of like thing that went on, really. And then after some months, I got an email from Dorothy, Audrey's sister,
Yes.
who said, it's about time I came on board. And so I went to meet her, and she prepared all these photographs for me to look at. And then at another meeting, we actually went to some of the places that were very important between her and Audrey, and that forms part of the film too.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, it's obviously takes a serious amount of time when you're doing all this sort of thing, though, doesn't it? You want to pay tribute to the life lived and to the person behind it, and to the very complicated areas of art and mental illness, and they're so complicated. I mean, how can you talk about art? How can you talk about mental illness? How can you talk about somebody's life after they've gone? So all those things are sort of like deeply difficult, but then exciting to explore how you can do that. One of my proudest moments was just when I sent Dorothy, Audrey's sister, the script. She went, "Thank you for giving me my sister back." That was wow.
Yeah,
that's lovely. Yeah. That's really, really nice. No, it's brilliant. I've loved it. I think it's great. The interesting thing with this film and with Dreams of a Life, they both have kind of an original source story that you developed, and it allowed you to research and interview people and bring them into your story. Is that something that you enjoy doing and you want to continue doing, or is it just, I mean, I guess it's a lot of work to do it that way, maybe. Well, I mean, rather than just inventing everything from scratch.
I think it's just getting captivated by somebody, but with Dreams of a Life, I mean, they're interesting opposites and have similarities, because Dreams of a Life about Joyce Vincent, who died at 38, wasn't discovered in a very busy part of London in her flat. She wasn't discovered for 3 years. Her TV was still on. Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. But she left nothing behind. So I had to make a documentary about her retracing. I mean, it's a documentary drama and it's a portrait. And I had to make that through the memories and the contradictory ideas about her by other people. Then the Audrey and Typist Artist, it's like Audrey left so much behind. It was the opposite. I had so much, but I think ultimately I am interested in women's stories. I'm interested in probably looking at it, people that are on the margins of society, either by choice or because they're pushed there. And I think I'm just fascinated by people that aren't dead center, and I want to bring them dead center. So I probably always will be doing something like that with whatever I do.
Good. I love it.
I like the outsiders. Don't call Audrey an outsider artist.
Oh no, don't say that.
She trained.
The film, I think, will be a great sort of help to establish her legacy, I think, or for her as an artist. Have you any hopes for what might happen in the future with regarding her art? I mean, obviously an exhibition somewhere would be amazing. Is that sort of anything that's ever been discussed? Or
yeah, I think we're really working on getting an exhibition in Sunderland. I mean, it's all to be determined exactly, but around, because obviously her hometown and where she was born and brought up, and was Sunderland through and through in many ways. So so I feel like that will be happening. And then I think, in due course, obviously a big organization like Wellcome, they plan things years and years ahead, But I think they will exhibit Audrey's work. And then what's great is the archive is available for people to go and look at. And Eleanor Carter and other people at Wellcome have made a brilliant job of making films about, like videos about the archive and putting it online. So there's a lot of accessibility. I think she will be written about by many academics and for a lot of, and art people. We screened the film for artists recently, and David Renfrew, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, came along, and he just loved her art and found, and just the artists just really were very positive about the film, and that meant a lot to me about uncovering the process of what it is to be, or the ideas or the feelings about what it is to be an artist. I think it really appealed to them, because it's complicated, like I said before. But yeah, so with Audrey Amiss, I really hope that I've written a lot about her. I hope to write a book. I mean, I have sort of written a book about her as well. If it could get published, it would be a good thing, but it's very difficult to get published, even with the films. That's annoying. But so I feel like I will always be thinking about her, writing about her. She's part of my life. She'll never leave my life. And I think other people are going to find a lot of possibilities to take her work into exhibitions to write about her work. So I think she's not going away, and she never wanted to go away. So
no, it's great. I mean, literally, if you go on Google or if you go on a search or whatever, and if you type in Audrey Amiss, it's asking you it's looking for artwork. It comes up Audrey Amiss artwork as the first search. So there's obviously people out there looking, because there's not that, obviously there isn't more now. I mean, when I first looked, when I originally found you, there wasn't a lot at all, and so hopefully that'll grow. As and the film is the best thing for it, really, and eventually, whether any of the works gets out from the Welcome, I don't know how it works with them, but obviously it'd be nice to have works in some of the galleries, getting into public collections in other parts of the country, and sort of spread it out, because you've got like websites like the Art UK website, which is a brilliant resource, and then you could have like works by Audrey on the Art UK websites that are get them in, into Sunderland's collections and things like that. Yeah,
that's where I think I saw on Art UK website that painting that has now been bought by someone, but I didn't. Yeah, I think that's where I saw it.
Right. Okay. But yeah, well, it's based in Stoke actually, Art UK, but it's a really interesting thing. Yeah. But so Carol, what are you working on now?
So I'm working. So I wrote some years ago. I wrote a book, 7 Miles Out, about growing up in Manchester.
Okay.
In the wake of my dad's suicide, but it's fictionalized. So I've adapted that into the screenplay. So that'll be the next film we make. We're raising money for it at the moment. And then I'm also, and the one that I've written for actors in mind is a time traveling witch film.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think 7 Miles Out will be definitely young women discovering the Manchester music scene, and particularly Joy Division and Ian Curtis and Crispy Ambulance and some of the the bands around at the time in Manchester, and being saved by the music, finding total love for music, and then the time traveling witch film is really about going back to two contemporary young women, go back to 1650 and are in the midst of a vigilante witch trial they become the center of. So I've wanted to make a witch film for over 20 years, about 23 years, and have done various things that have never happened, and so this will happen.
Oh, that's brilliant. No, I need to send you something, actually, not with regards to making a film. It's a book. There's an artist who was from Wales called Brenda Chamberlain. You'll have to Google her afterwards, but I'll send you a book on her. She's a fascinating woman, and I think that you'll be really into her. She moved to an island in North Wales called Bardsey Island, a really remote island, and lived there for like 15 years amongst the farmers and whatever there. But she was a fantastic artist, and she wrote, and she was a poet, and she's brilliant. And then she lived on Hydra in Greece.
Oh yeah, okay.
She lived there for a period of time, and she bit of a sort of tragic end. She died like 59, like an overdose, but she's a fascinating woman, and I think and there's a bit of material out there, so maybe I'll send you a book, you can have a look at it.
That's amazing. I'm gonna look at, and I have a question for you.
Oh god.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit this so I look really good, by the way.
No, how did you begin to start to become fascinated with art?
Oh wow, that's a good question. Well, it didn't sort of necessarily happen at school, which I think you were quite right in what you said before. The amount of people that you speak to that mention a teacher, in particular, don't they, with anything, like a particular teacher at school who inspired them for everything. And not to sort of put down my art teachers, but it didn't sort of happen that way for me at school. I wish it did. I wish I could mention a certain teacher at school that inspired me, but that didn't really happen. So I think it sort of came just from myself, really, more than anything. And I think where I live in Middleton, which is sort of north of Manchester, Greater Manchester. We like to say that we're from Manchester, but we're not. We're actually technically. It's weird. Middleton is so weird. It's we should be part of Manchester, but we're officially part of Rochdale, but we never say it.
Yeah. Because anyway, when I went to Rochdale College of Art, that's when I first heard of Middleton.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody sort of says, "Oh, we're from," because we don't even sound like we're from Rochdale as well. We sound more Manc than from Rochdale. But anyway, I digress. But in Middleton, where I live, we have got bits of connections with artists. Some artists have been here, and I got really interested in the fact that Lowry had been here for a little while and had done a particular painting here, which is quite well known.
How old were you when you?
I was probably maybe about 15, 16, something like that. So I was probably at school, but it was kind of in the background a little bit to my brain. So I was probably read it in a book, and sort of thought that was interesting. And then I suppose when I left school and maybe done a bit of college and whatnot, I started maybe buying a few things, collecting things. I think when I was a kid as well, I was interested in collecting. I think that's the other thing. Another way of getting involved in art and in a particular subject is you can be interested in collecting something when you're a kid, whether it's like, it could start off with like stickers, like football stickers or cards or something like that. And there's a bit of a collecting bug in sort of in the human DNA, I think, in sort of our, so I think it started. And then, so yeah, I started probably collecting paintings and picking up bits and pieces. And then obviously with being from Manchester and in the north, I started getting more involved in the northern art world, sort of post-industrial northern artists associated with Lowry. So I was probably in my, maybe early 20s at that sort of point, I would have thought, when I started getting involved in that and sort of knowing about that. And and then just over the years of, and then obviously you start getting on social media and it blows up again. I mean, I set up a page on social media. That's probably about 13 years ago that I set up the original Northern Art page on Facebook. And that was in response because at that time, there was a lot more galleries opening up in Cheshire.
Right.
A lot of Northern art galleries selling works by sort of various post-war British Northern artists. And it was a real sort of collecting thing. And people went a bit crazy for it for a while. Usually rich people in Cheshire. Basically. Who like looking at paintings of people working in factories. So there you go. Yeah, and that's it really. And then over time, you just buy more paintings and you're interested. And then I've written about art and I've done things. And the podcasts, they started over COVID, over lockdown really, because I think I'd wanted to do one for quite a few years. There's another podcast that is called Talk Art, which I don't know if you're familiar with that one. That's run by a couple of guys and that's quite well known. Russell Tovey, the actor, he's a massive art collector and he does that one with another guy who's an art dealer. And so that's a really good podcast. So that was listening to theirs, and then I thought I'll do my own. So yeah, then that's how it started with that. So long answer.
And what does it mean to you though to own a piece of art?
What does it mean to me? Well, I've got to actually like the work and find them interesting, and also various stories and narratives behind each work as to how I actually acquired them, and then connections really. It's a obviously a bit cliche maybe. It's a connection obviously with the artist. It's a connection with the time it was painted. A lot of the artists as well, the more recent works that I've got, I actually know the artists as well. So there's that sort of connection with them.
And I have seen you on Antiques Roadshow, haven't I? I
have been on the Antique Roadshow as well. I've been on twice. I've been to the Antique Roadshow 3 times, and they tried to film me the first time I went as well, but I rejected it. I didn't do it. And then the second time I was with a friend of mine who's since died, who's a legendary guy called Colin Jellicoe. Colin had a gallery in Manchester for 50 years. He was one of my best mates. I miss him all the time. And, so he'd asked me if I would write to Roadshow, Antique Roadshow, with regards to, he had a big comic book collection and he was really into like B-Westerns and all that sort of stuff. He was an artist. He had an art gallery, but he was always into cowboys and things like that. He never went to America in his whole life, but should have done. And so he said to me, well, we'll write to the Antique Roadshow and see if he can take some of his comics on. And he said, and I'll dress up as the Lone Ranger. And I said, okay. Right, so he made me take photos. I remember taking photographs of him in his art gallery, dressed in a Lone Ranger outfit, and then we wrote to them, and they wrote back like straight away and emailed back and said, yeah, that's fine, we'll do it. So then we went to Townley Hall, and it was good because it was seeing it from the other side of, you were going in the green room or whatever it's called, and you were seeing there's Fiona Bruce and everything else, and it was really cool, and that was good. That was a brilliant day out, and he got his stuff valued and everything and all the rest of it. And then the next time was the more recent time, which was with my friend Eric, and we went down to Ali Palais in London, and that was during the anniversary of the BBC, which was last year, the 100th anniversary. So we filmed that because he had a painting connected to the anniversary of of that. So yeah, it's cool. But it's proper art nerdy stuff.
I love it.
No, honestly, we have we meet up a few artists and whatnot, and we have a bit of a night out and that, and it's just wall to wall talking rubbish. It's good. It's good. You'll have to come along.
Oh yeah, it sounds amazing.
Next time you come up, yeah. But yeah, thanks, Carol. This has been awesome. It's been
really great. I really admire what you do. I love your Instagram page a lot as well.
Thank you. No, I love yours as well. It's great, and this is brilliant. And I'm looking forward to whatever you do after this. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the Q&As. I might throw a question out. I might not.
Yeah, come on, front row Stockport. Obviously, I'm really excited to do the one in Stockport because that's where I'm from. I did encourage that one. I said, please book it in Stockport, you know.
Well, have you ever been back to the house then, where you were from, where you grew up or anything?
Well, we just moved around so much. So some of it, I don't even know where we were. But yeah, so there isn't like one. I mean, I have been back to some of the places. And I I do go back sometimes. And when you get the train to Manchester, you always stop in Stockport, don't you? But I don't really.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
always stops there, and then
fair enough.
there's like a government charter; it has to stop in Stockport. I think there is, I think there is.
Yeah.
But so I'm excited to do the one in Stockport.
Yeah, no, I'll be there, front row. So
Manchester, Stockport.
Manchester, yeah. I'm going with. I'm taking a friend, an artist friend of mine's coming with me as well. In fact, my daughter's coming as well.
Oh, that's lovely. How old is your daughter?
She is 16. She's 16.
That's brilliant. Oh, that's great. Amazing.
So there you go. So she just passed. It's 15, isn't it? I think. Is it 15?
It's a 12 actually.
Is it 12?
12A, yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Bring younger.
Right, Carol, this has been brilliant. I'll let you crack on now.
Thank you so much, Anne.
And I'm sure we'll speak again soon. And have a nice rest of the day. But you've got loads of stuff on now, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I do about 4 Q&As this week, so I'm just getting ready to travel and things like that.
Gosh, yeah, good luck with it, and I'll see you on the 1st.
Yeah, brilliant.
All right, take care. See you later. Bye.
Love to
Bye.
Bye, darling.
How cool was that? Really, really chuffed to do that. So thank you, Carol, once again for doing it. It's meant a lot to me, and it does kind of complete a full circle with regards to how we first was in touch and everything else. So yeah, thank you. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. And of course, you can go and check out Typist Artist Pirate King. In fact, I'm really looking forward to that one that you mentioned about witches as well. Might be a few years away, that, but it does sound, it sounds good, that. I wonder if one of them will paint. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. As usual, I'll post some images relating to the episode on the Northern Art Facebook page and on the Instagram page too. Any likes, comments, shares, messages, follows, anything like that is very much appreciated. You can also subscribe to the channel on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts, and then you won't miss out on any episodes I upload in the future.